I'm Sky Cubacub, and I'm the creator of Rebirth Garments, which is a clothing line for queer and trans disabled folks of all sizes and ages. Today I'm going to teach you how to create a clothing pattern out of your existing clothing, but without deconstructing your clothing. What you'll need for this project is a spiky wheel that has these really sharp points all across it. It's kind of like a ton of little pins. It's really important that you get the ones that are actually spiky and sharp rather than the ones that are just for tracing paper. Those ones, I have no clue who even finds those useful, but these are the ones that are useful, and you will need to make just like a cardboard sleeve so that it will be safe and not stab you because they are very sharp. You'll also need some sort of rulers, some sort of pattern weights. I have a real one, but you could also use like soup cans, soup boxes. You will need scissors and a pencil, and then either a cutting mat like the one that I have under here, or cardboard. Cardboard is the easiest to get, so I would just stick with that. And it's really nice because of the thickness of the cardboard, the little pokey bits like really go into it. So cardboard is totally fine. And then you'll need some sort of big paper. So I have this brown paper. You can use butcher paper. You can use just any kind of paper that you can still write on somehow. Sometimes my friends use like brown Trader Joe's bags, just like paper bags that are bigger, and open them up and tape them together beforehand, just as long as you have a nice big piece that you can work with.
This is Radical Fit, an 8-month fashion-based program series that embraces craft, making, and DIY while providing a safe space routines to discuss gender equity and to dream and create through personal expressions of style. The initiative is funded through Project Next Generation, an education technology initiative of the Illinois Secretary of State and State Librarian Jesse White.
You can use this same technique that I'm going to teach you for either stretch clothing or woven clothing. You just need to make sure to add back in the seam allowances after you've made the patterns. I'm showing you on this pair of shorts, but you can do it for lots of different things. I've done it for blazers, button-up shirts. As long as you can kind of get to every angle of it somehow, then you'll be good. So we're first going to trace this panel here, and we're going to act as if this leg is just one piece rather than it being color blocked, because you get to color block it however you want. And this is a pair of shorts of my own, from my own clothing line, but yeah, you can do it with anything. There aren't really any sort of rules about copyright or legal rules about using patterns, because the fashion industry decided that they want to keep it open so that it just forwards more innovation. But also it's like, pants are pants. You get to do anything you like to them and put your own spin on them. So first I'm going to put my pattern weights / soup boxes down, and I'm going to take my spiky wheel, and I'm just going to trace where the seams are. So the main seams of this are down the center, where it this is like the front center, and then there's the back center, and you basically just see which pieces are needed for the actual construction versus which pieces are needed just for color blocking and aesthetic purposes. So we're just going to focus on the ones that need to actually make the shorts a pair of shorts. You're going to use this spiky wheel and then just trace along this shape. So you poke it through. You really want to make sure that it goes all the way through, and just trace along the edges of where the garments, like where the fabric meets the other fabric. and you can hear, if you're using cardboard, you can hear it puncturing the cardboard, and you want to do that. And don't worry about these spikes going through your clothing, because when you're making clothing, you have little spikes going through it, and it doesn't mess it up. So yeah, I just trace. And sometimes you're tracing through a lot of pieces of fabric at the same time, but that's okay. And you want to just make sure that the piece is as straight as possible and not folded. Like, it can fold over other pieces, but you want the piece that you're tracing to be as flat as possible. And just be careful not to stab yourself while you're doing this. Okay, so I have that, and then you can trace along the straight edge, because we're going to be flipping this over very carefully, and then tracing the other side. So I'm just going to turn it here and then just line up where those parts would meet. So now we're going to trace this side, with the exception of this tiny little extra part, which then we'll flip over and do again. So I'm going to just trace here and just like be mindful of trying to keep it straight and not bunching up too much. And just trace all of these seams. And then I'm going to just draw again this little part. And then I'm going to take off your weights. And then pinch where it has been folded. And then again, just try to line it up. And you want to do that little pinch to make sure that you actually keep it in the same place. So now I'm just going to trace this last part. And yeah, just do the exact same shapes, even if you're like, that seems weird. Like, why is it like this? Okay. So now we have a bunch of little dots all over the place. And what you're going to do is basically play connect the dots. You can ignore the vertical dots where we're attaching things, but yeah, just play connect the dots. I use a pencil, don't use a pen. And just do it real sketchy like. And then we can do a thing called truing, but lots of times the way that I've done this over the years, I'm like kind of used to the way that these things should be shaped, so when they look pretty good, you can just cut them out. And the nice thing about these shorts is it's the same on the other side. So basically this is the only pattern piece we need to make the shorts, because you just cut out two of these, one on one side, and then you flip it over and cut it on the other side. And my trims are just pieces of folded over spandex. So I would just measure how big this is. So if you measure from here to here and then double it, it'll be 3 inches wide, and then however big it needs to be for the waist, and then same for this. I think this is 2 inches wide at first, and then whatever the length is needed for that. And that's the leg trims and the waistband. You can add elastic into things if you're a person who likes that. I can't, because my stomach has a lot of problems with tightness, so I like, clothing that's fitted but not tight. So this is what my pattern piece looks like after I darkened it, after I played connect the dots. And so it's a lot more important for woven or non-stretch fabrics to do the truing or whatever, and that is to make sure that everything really lines up. So for example, I could measure from here to here and make sure it's the same length as from here to here, because this will be sewn together to make one shorts leg. But with stretch fabric, it's kind of nice because you can always stretch things to fit better, and then you can always adjust the pattern afterwards if you want. If you're like, oh, this part was too long, you can just easily cut that off and then sew over it again. But yeah, a lot of people use these fancy hip curve rulers or like other kinds of curved rulers, but they tend to be pretty expensive. So it's kind of an investment. You might be able to like maybe print out the shape of one and then kind of use it, because you mostly just need the edges. You don't need the measurements always. And any measurements that you have on a curve, you can always just use a straight ruler and just like slowly move it on a curve to make sure that it fits. But any straight parts that you want to be straight, you can straighten up a little bit more with a straight ruler. Before you cut out your pattern, make sure you get into the habit of labeling your pattern. So this is the front and the back, so I'm going to put a F at the front, a B at the back. You can write center back, wherever the center back is, center front, wherever the center front is. Make sure that you put in your grain line, and I know that I want the stretch to be going around my leg, so I will have the grain line perpendicular to that. And I'll draw a little arrow at the top so I know which way is the top. Make sure to write your name and the date, because you will probably make different versions of this pattern, and you want to make sure you know which version it is. If there is multiple pieces to the pattern, you could say this is piece one of, whatever. This one's just one of one. And then you can write all of the directions if you want to of sewing. So for this one, I'm going to say cut to, remember to flip. If you are color blocking it, which I would recommend so that you can do something kind of fun, although maybe do that once you're more comfortable, then you'll do your color blocking. So I can show a little example of that. But also you will either have to add in your seam allowance now, and you can use a ruler and add either a 1/4 inch for if you're using a serger, or 1/2 inch if you're using a normal sewing machine. And you're going to need to add that in now, or you can do it while you're cutting. I tend to do it while I'm cutting. Now you're ready to cut out your pattern, so I'm just going to cut this out. When you sew it together, this will be like the one pant leg, one shorts leg. And then you can look at the serger tutorials to learn how to sew your things together.
Check out the rest of the Radical Fit playlist on the YOUmediaChicago YouTube channel. We would love to see the projects you are working on, so use the hashtags CPL Radical Fit, YOUmedia, and YOUmediaChicago, and tag us on Instagram and Twitter at YOUmediaChicago. Or find us on our Facebook, YOUmedia at Chicago Public Library.